While the Galaxy S series has gone through many last names, Mini, Edge, Plus, E, Lite, FE, and Ultra, the base S model has always been a constant since its debut in 2010, 15 years ago. By the way, did you know that there were 6 different Samsung Galaxy S1 variants in the world? Here we've got the last 4 generations of Samsung's premium compact flagship, the S25, S24, S23, and S22, and we're about to see just how much their cameras have improved over the last years in this Samsung Galaxy camera comparison. Hey, I'm Olive, your host here at Versus.com. For our camera comparisons, we always award points with the maximum number depending on the number of devices in the test. Since this comparison involves 4 devices, the maximum score for each category is 4. We'd also like to add that we always evaluate the photos and videos using a calibrated photography monitor.
As always, we'll start off with standard wide photos as we feel that's the mode people use most frequently.
For the wide lens, all phones carry a 50 megapixel lens, first introduced with the Galaxy S22. This lens has an f1.8 aperture and a 1/1.56 sensor size. Starting with the shot, the S23 immediately sticks out, and not in a good way, as its white balance is overly warm. The S22 and S23 have similar dynamic range, but the colors are a bit too punchy. The S25 looks the most natural, but it does have a bit of a hard time handling the bright sky behind the branches. In this next shot, the S23 is once again overly warm. The rest look great in terms of color, but the S25 does the best job handling highlights, especially in the white areas. Indoors, it's yet another overly warm photo from the S23. This time, the S22 and S23 go heavy in contrast, while the S24 and S25 keep things more balanced and natural looking.
Moving on to a few ultra-wide examples, ultra-wide is a great mode for capturing more of the scenery in your photos.
For ultra-wide, again I'll carry a 12 megapixel lens, first introduced with the Galaxy S22 with a 120-degree field of view. In this shot, the S25 completely blows out the highlights. The S23 handles exposure better, but the colors are still off. Both the S24 and S22 actually deliver solid photos this time. In this second shot, the S25 and S22 again struggle with overexposed highlights, which makes me look kind of pale. The S23 does a better job with the highlights, but the photo ends up looking way too contrasty. The S24 nails both exposure and colors here. Indoors, the S22's photo has a weirdly cold white tone, while the others get the white balance right. Still, they all crank up the saturation a bit too much, and somehow turn the gray curtain in the background purple.
It's time for portrait mode, which is one of my personal favorites, so let's see which one of these gives us the best edge detection while still maintaining details.
In portrait mode with the main lens, all the photos look great at first glance, but when you look closer, each one has its own issues, either around the space next to my arm or in the tree above me. Switching to the telephoto lenses, the S24, 23, and 22 all have that slightly fake-looking edge detection, especially around my hair. The S25 actually does a surprisingly good job here. It even picks up individual strands of hair.
High-quality video is absolutely crucial when it comes to your smartphones, so let's put these beasts to the test and see which one does it best.
For video, all phones can film at 8K resolution, however the S22 is capped at 24 FPS, while the rest can shoot at 30 FPS. As always, to keep things fair, we record in 4K 30 FPS. With the main lenses, the S24, S23, and S22 all deliver contrast-heavy videos when shooting against the light. But once I'm front-lit, the footage from all of them looks pretty identical. The S25, on the other hand, is less contrasty when I'm backlit, but it captures the most shadow detail by far. Indoors, all the videos are fairly similar, but the S25 and S23 lose the most detail. You can especially notice it on my jeans. The S24 and S22 keep the sharpness and detail much better. In portrait video, the S23 and 22 struggle the most with depth. They even blur the ground right under my feet. The S25 and S24 are much more accurate when it comes to edge detection and depth. For ultra-wide video, all the phones blow out the highlights at some point, but the S22 is definitely the most inconsistent of the bunch. So no perfect ultra-wide video in these conditions. Indoors again, the S23 has an overly aggressive HDR effect. The S25 struggles a bit with exposure when the lighting changes, while the S24 and S22 handle everything smoothly and deliver solid footage overall.
Buttery smooth video footage is absolutely crucial when it comes to your smartphone, so let's put these bad boys to the test and see which one gives us the steadiest results.
While walking, there's really nothing to complain about. All Galaxies do a solid job keeping the footage smooth and steady. With active stabilization on and while running, the S22 shows a bit of camera shake and feels slightly choppy when turning. The rest of the phones stay perfectly stable throughout.
It is selfie time, which means it's front camera test time. Let's see which one of these makes me look the best. Also, while I'm at it, I'm going to test out front camera audio and video.
At the front, the S25, 24, and 23 have a 12-megapixel lens, while the S22 has a 10-megapixel lens. However, all of them have the same focal distance at 26mm, which translates to the same field of view. In this first selfie, we'd say the S25, 24, and 22 all have slightly off colors. The S23 actually takes the best shot this time, with nice skin tones and solid contrast. In low light, the S25 once again struggles with color accuracy, while the other models get the scene colors right. That said, the S24 and 22 smooth out my face a bit, while the S23 keeps more detail.
So now let's test out the audio on all of these devices and see if there has been any progression throughout the years. We'll start off with the S22 over here. What do you guys think? How do I sound here? Moving on to the S23, has there been any obvious progression? What do you think? Then we've got the S24. I'm in a relatively quiet area with some cars going past, so how's it handling that? And finally, we've got the brand new S25. Is it any better than the rest? Let's talk about it.
As you heard, the S23 and S24 sound basically the same and kind of muffled when there's background noise. The S22 isn't bad, but the S25 stands out by boosting speech so you can hear me more clearly.
We've come to the zoom category, which is always a very interesting and challenging one. So let's zoom into that busy street down there and see which one of these can capture those moving cars best.
Once again, the S22 debuted the lens all these models carry, a 10-megapixel camera with 3x optical zoom. At optical zoom, all the photos look pretty much the same, though the S24 does make the sky a bit darker. Things get weird once you start digital zooming. At 10x, the S25 and S24 are super blurry, but at 20x, it's the S25 and S22 that lose clarity. By the time you hit 30x, honestly, they all look rough, but the S23 still manages to pull out a bit more detail than the rest. So yeah, it's not exactly a zoom king, but the S23 has a slight edge over the other Galaxies.
Slow motion is not a necessity to have on your smartphone, but it's definitely a cool feature. So let's put it to the test.
For this mode, we always start by testing the max resolution possible. The S25 and S24 can shoot at 4K 120 FPS, while the S23 and S22 are capped at 1080p 240 FPS. The S23 and S22 have a super slow-mo mode, but it only records a few seconds, so we skipped it. As you can see, the S23 and S22 really fall behind in resolution compared to the newer models. That said, the S25 tends to overexpose the shot, while the S24 keeps the brightness more balanced. Next up, we tested the highest FPS each phone can handle. All of them top out at 240 FPS and 1080p, so no 4K this time. Once again, the S25 slightly overexposes the footage, while the rest keep things looking more natural.
It is time to get up close and personal. Let's get into macro mode.
Unfortunately, none of the phones have a true macro mode for close-ups. This is as close as you can get before everything turns into a blurry mess. The shots look decent, but yeah, not real macro. Using the zoom lenses, the S24 crushes the shadows way too much, and the S22 underexposes the whole scene. The S25 nails the dynamic range, while the S23 stands out with the sharpest detail.
Finally, let's take a look at a few low-light examples to see how these devices handle darker conditions.
The S24 definitely has the least detail here and throws in a strong green tint. The S22 is a bit sharper but leans way too magenta. The S25 and 23 are both really sharp, though the S25 is super noisy while the S23 looks much cleaner. With the ultra-wide lens, that magenta tone shows up again on the S25 and S23. The S22 is a bit underexposed, and while the S24 isn't perfect, its white balance is the closest to real life. In portrait mode, the S24, 23, and 22 all have good edge detection, but the S23 goes overboard with contrast and smoothing. The S25 nails edge detection but brings in a lot of noise. With the telephoto lens, all phones take a really big hit in quality. The S25 and 22 get hit the hardest. The S24 has nice colors but lots of noise, while the S23 is sharper but messes up the colors. For video using the main lens, the S25, 23, and 22 all struggle with shadow detail. The S24 actually captures a lot more, but has a strong magenta tint that the others don't. Picking a winner here really comes down to personal taste. Switching to the ultra-wide lens, quality drops even more across the board, all videos lacking lots of sharpness. Still, just like before, the S24 pulls out the most shadow detail, but this time it has a green undertone instead of magenta. Weird. Alright, let's do a quick summary and see who the winner is. Our scoring system is based on order of importance, giving higher percentages to more popular categories like wide, ultra-wide, portrait, and video, while assigning lower percentages to less popular categories such as audio, zoom, slow motion, and macro. For example, in photos taken with the wide lens, the S25 scored 11 general points, with 20% of this equaling 2.2 final points, and so on with the next phones and categories. So for the main camera, the S25 scored the most points. In ultra-wide, the S24 took the lead. Portrait mode, S25 came out on top again. For video, it's a tie between the S24 and S25. Stabilization is a three-way tie between the S25, 24, and 23. When it comes to the front camera, the S23 actually came out ahead. For audio, the S25 takes the win. Zoom goes to the S23 overall. In slow motion, the S24 delivered the best results. For macro, it's a tie between the S25 and S23. And finally, for night mode, it's another three-way tie between the S25, S24, and S23. In fourth place, we've got the Galaxy S23. It wasn't bad by any means, but it had a habit of cranking up the saturation and contrast a little too much. Third place goes to the Galaxy S22. Oldest of the bunch, but it still held its ground, especially with some solid front camera performance. And in first place, we have the Galaxy S25, which crushed it in both photos and videos. That said, low light is still its weak spot with lots of noise once the sun goes down. Which means second place goes to the Galaxy S24. It came super close to the S25 and honestly still puts up a strong fight against its younger sibling. But what do you think? Have you used any of these phones, and how was your experience? Definitely let us know in the comments below. And of course, links to all of these Galaxies can be found in the description below. But wait, if you want to keep on binge watching, make sure to check out our camera comparison with the Ultra versions of these phones. And before you go, be sure to leave a big thumbs up if you enjoyed this video, and make sure to subscribe, as we're always testing out new devices to help you decide what is best for you. We'll see you in our next video, and until then, take care.